All right. Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Next Level Podcast. I'm your one of 3 hosts, Jeremy Stone,
Johannes,
Dylan,
and today we have Ian Rowan Legg. Ian, you want to introduce yourself and maybe give a little brief description of what it is you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Ian. I am a strength and conditioning coach. I started coaching back in 2013 when I was doing my undergrad at Acadia, so working primarily with athletic populations there. Up until that point, I was more so just like a meathead, training for powerlifting, bodybuilding-ish type stuff. And so when I started training athletes, I was using a lot of those methods or similar. I started to learn more about training athletes, which shifted kind of how I approach training quite a bit. I was doing a lot of athletic therapy work, injury prevention stuff at Acadia at that time as well. Graduated from there, went to do my master's at the University of Regina, where I was training track and field throwers as well as football players, worked with the football team there.
Cool.
I finished, came back here because Regina is Regina. It's pretty flat, not a lot going on there, and it wasn't for me. It was a great experience, but came back to Nova Scotia because this is my home, and I was actually going to be working at Acadia again when I came back because I had good connections there. COVID happened. They didn't really have the budget to bring on more strength coaches, so moved into the private sector, and now I work with just like a big variety of athletes, a lot of baseball players, soccer, football, rugby. I played rugby for a long time, so that's kind of like when I feel like I'm tired of powerlifting, I always think I might go back to playing rugby and being an athlete, being a team sport athlete again. But yeah, so pretty kind of broad experience, I guess, but definitely roots in kind of the powerlifting side, playing lots of sports as a kid, and then kind of diversifying as I kind of develop as a coach.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that you were, I didn't know half of that, so that's cool.
Yeah, no, well, I've known you guys for like a few months now. That's probably the most I've ever really talked about that. So.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of talk, and I think Johannes had some plans here for this sort of vein of conversation as well, but I wanted to kind of bring your own athletic coaching and see how it's meshed with powerlifting. So my first question was, how is training athletes different than training for bodybuilding or powerlifting? What would you say is different? And sorry, you're gonna hear this fucking thing squeak. Sorry, everybody. Yeah. So how is training athletes different than training for bodybuilding and powerlifting? What are you doing differently?
So how should I break this down? I guess with athletes, big thing, probably the biggest thing, and I think this is kind of there are some arguments from the powerlifting body when it comes to training team sport athletes. I think the biggest thing is probably like the power, the velocity component. With powerlifting, obviously strength forms the foundation of our ability to do most athletic things, but it's really identifying when does this become like a diminishing return. How strong is strong enough for an athlete? Yeah. And it's very sport dependent. Obviously, if you're like a forward in rugby and you're battling a scrum or a ruck, you need absolute strength. If you're an offensive lineman, you need absolute strength. But for a lot of athletes, we want to build a foundation with strength, and we want that ceiling so that when we are developing power, we can bring that, that rate of force development up towards that ceiling. But getting that power closer to our strength ceiling is really the priority, right? Like we want enough strength that we can maximize and be our most powerful self, but eventually just, doubling down on strength becomes a diminishing return. Yeah. And that's something I started to realize, as I work with more athletes. It's like, okay, you're in your 3rd, 4th, 5th year of playing university football. Maybe I don't need to be doing all of this accessory work. Like maybe you have a really solid foundation. We're managing, years of injuries and overuse stuff. We need to double down on the things that are going to make you perform on the field. We need to keep, your tendons healthy. We need to keep you ready to operate at higher speeds, higher velocities, and that's something that I think is probably the main gap with powerlifting. You can do dynamic effort work, maybe you're running conjugate and you do that type of speed, explosive power work, but I find most programs don't really have that. And so that I think is probably the big thing. Really doubling down on like unilateral work. And I think more powerlifting like power lifters are understanding the importance of this, especially as they sustain injuries and they see, okay, maybe I have to deal with this asymmetry, whether you have kind of the quantitative data to back that or not. But single leg work, I think, is really, really underrated still from like a sport performance standpoint. Like, I would argue that
100%.
if you're a team sport athlete and you're running, you need to be able to operate on one leg.
Yeah.
You can probably be doing a lot more single leg work than double leg work most of the time. Again, sport, time of year dependent, but that unilateral work matters a lot. And then also addressing just like different planes of movement. Like powerlifting is all sagittal for the most part. You can use other planes to kind of develop weaknesses, but you need to be very competent and strong in the frontal plane for sports. You need to be able to rotate. Rotation is really important for just like running, and people kind of forget that. So just being able to rotate properly and have that contraction relaxation, that's a big thing. I feel like I'm kind of going off here a bit, but
no, you're cool. That's bang on, I think. It was jarring to me. I picked up golf in the last couple of years, and like my ability to rotate is just not there. Like, because everything we do is so in this plane. That's it.
Yeah. And I do think even with when we're looking at rotation, powerlifting can take a lot from sports. Over like getting good at rotating will mean that you're good at anti-rotation. Right?
Yeah.
So if you start implementing stuff like that, you'll get better anti-rotation. So it's like you still have all those forces applying to you as you're going through. It's just the main focus is just that sagittal up and down.
You probably feel a lot better too if you just have some capability to move around other than just in sagittal all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's funny you mentioned golf, because I went to a driving range once with my ex-girlfriend and her brother, and her brother's in the NHL, and so like he's got like a hard shot, but he can hit a ball. He knows how to golf.
Yeah,
he's like ripping balls down like the back of the range, and I'm just like, this is like before I was really trying to train like an athlete. He's like, man, you're just like a block, like you're just like a block from the hips up, and I'm just like, I just don't know how to do this anymore.
Yeah,
I'm so out of training. Like that was one thing. Even like my scapular function. Like I work with a lot of baseball players, and so that's like a huge priority for us. And after years, and maybe this is starting to become like, oh, we shouldn't always be like back down with our shoulder blades. I know there's a whole argument around that as well. But I did that for so long, and so getting back into just like protracting my shoulder blades, I was like, holy fuck, like I've lost so much like range and just moving my shoulders forward. And I think there's a lot of things with that where you're so focused on just like tension, compression all the time with powerlifting, because you need to have that stability to manage heavy load. But being explosive, a huge component of that is being able to relax. It's like if you sprint and you're creating powerful extension through your hip, you need to be able to relax through your hip flexor, and then it's that constant relaxation, contraction, right? It's the same thing with rotating, and that's something I find you start to lose if you're just focusing on tension all the time. And I
think it feels so nice to like do a movement where you let yourself protract, like a back movement, or even a push-up where you go past that normal range where you'd be benching, or like rotating, just moving around. Like, it's something that we definitely lose. I try to keep a little bit of like single leg work in my powerlifting clients. I'm sure you guys do, or even your Gen Pop. But man, like it's definitely something we
single leg stuff's amazing.
Yeah, you probably did a ton of that in football.
I did, like from a football standpoint, like we did tons of like single leg, single arm stuff too, explosive stuff. We trained a lot more like Olympic lifters, right? Like getting like power cleans, clean and jerks and stuff like that. A lot of front squatting. Like we did our back squats, but when we did a back squat, it was more.
Johannes loves front squats.
Going on a 30-minute tangent about that.
I personally love the front squats. But speaking from a back squat standpoint, like when we play football, it's a lot of box squatting. Because, like, I mean, a full back squat's good in sports, but I mean, you got to think, like, position-wise, right? Like, I play linebacker. I'm not sitting in a squat, right? I'm in, like, a high quarter squat position. So we would train a lot more box squats or pin squats.
You generate a lot more like force, which power the whole.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
With that box. Right?
Yeah, literally.
You didn't do. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You didn't do football, right? You just did basketball. That was your main steez.
I played one game in high school. And we lost 89-0. I said, "Fuck this."
That was your fault. Wow. That was the one game you played.
Yeah. There you go. One game I played in high school.
Yeah.
No, I played it growing up, but it wasn't
hard to do. 89-0.
Yeah, I was like, "Fuck this."
Was it like 2 games back to back?
No, it was one game. I was like, "Fuck this." I was like, "I'm not doing this."
Having fucking non-flashbacks thinking about that.
No,
He's gonna be silent for the rest of the podcast. Yeah. Okay. So next would be things new athletes can nail down that would pay off big for them in their athletic career through, I guess, training.
Well, I think honestly, like, this may seem backwards to what I'm just saying, but you do really have to double down on those basics starting out. Like, you do need to learn how to squat. Like, you need to know how to do that. You need to learn how to land properly, just like learning how to be like bouncy, like extensive plyometric work. Like, I like that you mentioned the other day, or like I do some plyos when I warm up. I think that's another thing that's really underrated for powerlifters from like a tendon health standpoint. It's like we don't necessarily need to just expose our tendons like from a rehab injury prevention standpoint. Just like isometric work or pauses, like those really like low, moderate intensity plyometric work, really good for tendon health.
Yeah.
So I find a lot of the time, at least from like an athletic standpoint, if you're gonna develop like a tendon issue, it's either gonna be overuse or it's when you make that powerful cut and you're like, oh fuck, I felt something there. And more often than not, it's that quick contraction, right? It's like when you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
And so I think like the timing that comes with the plyos is a really valuable piece that people miss.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like developing a foundation, like building just like some muscle mass, developing a foundation of strength. Like that's one thing with our younger athletes. When we have kids in for like our off-season baseball program and they're there for both parts and that's like 24 weeks of training, it's like there's only so many progressions we can make in the gym. It's like I don't need to be changing this every 4 weeks because you're probably going to be doing this for the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
And so it becomes one of those things where you really need to take that time, double down, learn bilateral movement, learn single leg movement, build some mass, develop some strength, learn how to land properly, learn how to run and sprint properly, basic plyos, like extensive low intensity plyos. Yeah, just like really basic stuff. But
so the basics. To sum up the basics.
Yeah, the basics, but executing them really well.
So many things come back to that too. Like even with our training, even with powerlifting, like you have to be revisiting the basics all the time. And I think you're only better for it. But I'm sure we've all sorry to come back to your point about like you were saying how a lot of in your experience like tendon injuries might happen because of like I think you said load management or just like moving in a weird way that you're not used to. Yeah, like we've probably all experienced that from powerlifting. You're just not used to that anymore. Like I'll have friends that like powerlift or maybe they just go to the gym and kind of train these movement patterns. And then they'll decide after 4 years of not doing anything, they're like, oh yeah, let me jump into a basketball game. I'm gonna start playing basketball once a week, and they're immediately they get fucked.
Yeah.
Well, it's like once you stop like actively reaching and going into those ranges of motion, your body can't deal with the force in them.
It's a nice. There's a nice little like saying. It's like injuries happen when you do too much too soon after doing not enough for too long.
Yeah.
And that's exactly. I've seen and experienced that myself.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah. So like So I guess to talk about what you just talked about with what athletes can do, what newer athletes can do, even in powerlifting, if you can kind of maintain some of those things that you were saying, like the plyo, stuff like that, that's something that you never hear of powerlifters doing. But yeah, if we did that stuff, we'd probably be better for it. We'd probably be more prepared for real life when we get into those ranges, like you said, that we lose out on and then get hurt doing something stupid.
Yeah, and like with those ranges, why I'm a big fan of like stuff, and you probably do this too, like a front foot elevated split squat. Right?
Yeah.
It takes load off of that front knee, but we're still able to activate that range and get in that range sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it's not meant to be like a hypertrophy exercise. It's meant to be like, this is here so you don't fuck yourself up.
Yeah.
That's all it is, right? So.
Yeah, I like exposing my clients to like weird, unusual ranges.
Yeah.
Like it's just not something we do. So if I can have someone doing like sissy squats or
Yeah.
Bulgarians or shit like that, and you're gonna stay conditioned too.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Box
so-
jumps are awesome. Like
Yeah.
I've always been a huge fan of box jumps. Even when I was up to like 270 pounds, I was still at Prime
That's
Strength Club
wild.
doing crazy high box jumps. Because you got to remember, like the guys, you're getting stronger. Like your legs are getting stronger. You're gonna be more powerful, so you can
Yeah.
jump just as high, right? Like
Yeah.
because I went years without doing any box jumps because I was getting big for powerlifting, trying to get strong. And then I was just screwing around one day and I was doing box jumps and I could still almost jump my own height at 270 pounds. Like I
Yeah,
got
that's
videos of
crazy.
it. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah,
I was like,
that's fucking
I
crazy.
swear to God, I got a video of it. It was like up to my chin high.
Yeah,
But
fuck.
it's just like because my legs got so strong, like that transferred over,
Yeah.
which was good. But I noticed like my side to side like lateral movements
Oh, yeah.
That's stuff.
is not the same anymore because
No,
I haven't
man.
been doing it for so many
Even
years.
fucking around
Right?
like at the beach, grabbing it, like going after a frisbee or something like that.
Yeah.
Like my knees be all jacked up.
And sore, yeah, because
Yeah.
you're not used to.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other
Or
day.
any
Yeah.
twisting, you're just like, oh, there
Yeah,
goes the
don't
back.
do that anymore.
But box jumps is just straight up and down,
Yeah.
so and your just
Yeah.
legs are so much stronger.
It's
So
nice to do
like-
something a little athletic, even if.
Oh, I love doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. As a previous athlete, I'm sure you do. But even as like, I was never an athlete, so I'm probably the one person here. With, like, I didn't really play anything. I did like swimming lessons.
Yeah.
That counts.
But anyway, yeah, I played like soccer when I was a kid, but I didn't really take any sports seriously in high school. I went to a little French high school. We didn't really have any like sports teams that were like, we were the 100, and we were the guys who lost in the 100 plus to fucking nothing.
Yeah.
So
That was like normal for you.
yeah. So fuck, what was I just talking about? Oh yeah, so I find it nice when my coach puts in something that's a little bit athletic for me.
Yeah.
Just to kind of fuck around and feel something different, do something different. I don't know, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like it's kind of bad that even coaches will probably hear will call powerlifters not real athletes.
Yeah,
We even call ourselves that, so it's like we are athletes. We're
Yeah.
just not like it's not team sport. We're very just one-dimensional Olympic weightlifters. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
but we're not athletes. 'Cause we don't really do anything that's very athletic.
Yeah. No, I make that joke like
Yeah.
real athletes, but like,
Yeah.
man, I got hurt way more, and maybe this is partially my fault, but I got hurt more powerlifting than I ever did playing like contact sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was more just like overused like tissue stuff.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
actually having to manage that amount of training volume because
Yeah.
it's it's one of those things when we get to there are athletes that don't really understand the value of strength training still, and for like pitchers, like we don't want someone pitching at max velocity year round. Like that's how you just ruin your shoulder,
Yeah.
you ruin your
Yeah.
elbow,
Yeah.
and just getting a different type of stress. Like I think people don't understand just the benefit of getting that variety of stress. Same with the variety of just like movement variability.
Yeah.
The difference in stress and how it gives your body a bit of a break from its
Yeah.
regular sports stress. Like
Yeah.
it's different.
That's like, oh, sorry, you go ahead. Sorry.
No, but just at the same time, it's like if you're doubling down on that one thing.
Awesome.
If you're doubling down on that one thing, you just have to be conscious of, am I doing too much of that one thing?
Yeah.
It's still hard, like it's still very high
Yeah,
force.
yeah.
Like whether you're planting and sprinting at a high velocity or you're lifting something slow with more load, like it's still high force either way. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like how you're exposed to it. is
Yeah, it's
different.
like what muscles are taking the bias of that movement, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, that's a conversation that you and I had where like we were talking about like taking routine singles in training, and
Yeah.
that was like a point that I brought up. Is like I had sent this little reference from this book. It's called Scientific Principles of Strength Training, and it was just saying like doing the exact comp movement places an exact stress on the exact angle of muscles and tissues in a specific way that if you like change just a little bit, like maybe going from low bar to high bar, you might give your body a little bit of a break, and hopefully you can.
Yeah, and like the only issue
Avoid
with that,
overuse.
yeah, like the only issue with that, and I can't find the hardest.
Oh,
part, is
we
the text.
probably shouldn't get into singles.
No, it's just like it doesn't go into like sports
Yeah,
training. That's why I
yeah.
bring it up. It's like so. There's a lot of times when you take people off a field into a weight room, you don't want to be doing ultra specific movements in the weight room because you want that's their time to get off the field.
Yeah.
What you're doing in the weight room is so that they're not on the field. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of like the basis of the point. Where it's like with powerlifting, we don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
So we like the singles and the squats. Those are our practice. That's our actual
Yeah.
practice. That's
Yeah.
our game. Where those accessories, then okay, that should be our time in the weight room
Yeah,
not
away
doing
from
powerlifting,
it, yeah.
doing things that are different, not in that just savage.
Terrence used to say it too. He was like, when I'm in the powerlifting room, that's me practicing my sport,
Yeah.
and then I go and then I'm doing something else.
Now
I'm doing
I'm
something
gonna get
different,
better.
like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Way of looking at it, honestly.
Yeah, and that's how you probably should look at it as a power. Even like I said with athletes, it's like you go in the weight room. Like I've seen people do this ultra specific, like they're swinging
Yeah, they don't
50-pound bats. It's like, hey, you're probably just fucking up your mechanics now.
No, yeah,
Right?
So
Yeah,
it's
you
like-
don't need to. You don't need to emulate what happens on the field.
No, it should be.
You
should be that
can just train and try to build muscle,
Yeah.
build strength in a conventional way,
Exactly.
and I'm sure that will transfer to the field in some way.
And like I have no idea the force ranges of throwing a baseball. But like if you're throwing a baseball, right? Maybe you should do some more something else, like still like a pushing, throwing.
Yeah,
movement.
like
Yeah.
protracting and
Yeah, but it'll
contracting.
be it'll be complete different force grip to it, completely different everything to
Yeah,
it,
yeah, yeah.
and it's again strengthening different ranges of that.
Yeah.
right? Maybe we're strengthening a more protracted shoulder position.
Yeah.
Right.
I find
So-
also, like sports wise, like if you're talking like me, because I have a football background
Yeah.
for years, we're talking like a football standpoint. Like some of the strongest guys in the gym aren't necessarily some of the strongest guys on the field. There's field strength, football standpoint. There's field strength, then there's gym strength.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've always been kind of a bit of both, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then there's guys I played with playing football, like Ty Kelly, if he ever watches this. Amazing football player. Like, he's strong, don't get me wrong, strong in the gym, but like on the field, he was like 100 times stronger. Like, he could like run me over.
That's that.
You know what I
that's
mean?
That
Like,
skill practice, right? That's that transfer from the
yeah,
gym over, right? You have to
exactly.
have that, right? 'Cause
Exactly, yeah.
I go to a football field, some little kid
Yeah.
fucking destroy me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know where to put my hands. You know what I mean?
yeah, there's like, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't do my hands.
yeah. You don't know what to do with them, right?
Yeah.
Like
So it's
another one was like playing at St. Mary's. Like I played with a guy named Jay Langa who played for the Ticats for years, and like I mean he was a smaller guy, but he was still pretty jacked, fairly strong in the gym. Like, but he wasn't as strong as me and other people. But getting hit by him on the field was being hit by a fucking truck.
Yeah.
Literally by a truck. Like the guy has some of the hardest hits I've ever seen in my life.
Weird.
But
What is
it's
that?
just like it's different between like in football standpoint, right? Like field strength and gym strength don't necessarily transfer
Correlate.
completely.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. The stronger you're in the gym, you're going to be stronger on the
Yeah,
field.
yeah, yeah.
But then again, I've seen it the opposite direction too.
What do you think?
It's weird, but it's
how
like
would you
yeah.
how would you rationalize?
Yeah, what would you? Yeah, this is football though,
It's
right?
probably, it's,
So
it's
like,
probably I would assume a skill thing. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
This could also
Yeah.
just be like a make believe thing.
I
Like,
think
you know what I
it's-
mean.
Yeah.
It could be just something
well,
you
it's
notice.
also like how if they could be a more I don't know
Could
more
be a mindset
explosive
thing.
person
Yeah.
versus a very strong person. Right?
Yeah,
they can
that's-
be much more explosive. They don't have like the endurance to do a set of
Yeah.
8, but
Yeah.
they can do.
But they can move
fucking
their
do a set
own
of
body.
3
Yeah.
really fast.
Yeah.
It's like some of those athletes will have like a squat where they're like, oh my gosh, you moved that like so quick, and they go up 20 pounds and fail.
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's like
different. Yeah,
yeah, it's one of those weird.
No grind.
Yeah, they don't have the grind or
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So
They're
just that
very
fast.
explosive.
I want to hear Ian's take.
I think it is like pretty multifaceted actually. I think that's probably the first point
Yeah.
is like you have guys that move a lot of weight and they're strong, but again they're so far from their ceiling when they actually get on the field and they don't know how to express that strength at high velocity.
Yeah.
And that's probably the biggest component. It's like you're strong but your power isn't very high. That's why I think it's funny like powerlifting, we call it
Yeah,
powerlifting.
force lifting.
Force lifting, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not moving fast. But I think there's also like a big mental component to that. Like when you're going to hit someone and you're not thinking I'm going to hit this person, you're thinking I'm going to run through this
I'm
person.
gonna
Yeah.
kill him.
Like, you
That's
see-
literally what I
You
said.
see like the mindset of some people. So I
Yeah.
worked with this girl, baseball player, and her dream was to play on like Women's Team Canada baseball.
Yeah.
She was a decent baseball player, but I would see her do like agility drills at her gym, and the way she was competitive, I was like, she's got that like mindset, and it's like
Yeah.
it's one of those things you don't notice until you see them training and like competing, and you'd have her do like a sprint on her own, but then you'd have her race someone, and it's like suddenly like the aggression,
Yeah.
like you flick
Yeah.
a switch or something.
Yeah.
And she actually is just started her first year at St. FX on a rugby scholarship because I was like,
Fuck
you
yeah.
should be a rugby player, and I was
Sick.
like, you should.
That gave me
just-
goosebumps. That's fucking
It's like
Yeah.
no, 'cause- and like her coach, not her coach rather, my boss at the gym I work at was like, Shona's a great baseball player, but she's a better athlete, and I think she would be better in a different sport that better fits like her talents.
Yeah.
And I was like, right away I was like, you're decently fast and you're decently strong and powerful, but you have that mindset that will take you really far on the field, and I think that's
an
really
interesting
underrated.
thing. I've never been exposed to that where like, so just the benefit of having someone watching you train as an athlete, they can actually place you based on your strengths versus like some kid doesn't know, like, you know, I'm really competitive, maybe I should be in this other thing. They're probably just doing what their mom and dad tell them.
Yeah.
But like that's great that you were able to do that, and now look like how this girl benefited.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And that's kind of like a unique scenario because we do a lot of testing on force plates, and so we can really identify like who are the athletes that don't have that twitchiness but they're strong, and then we have other athletes that are naturally really twitchy and really bouncy but maybe their ceiling is lower, and then how you approach their training from that has to train a little bit because you know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and that has a bit of implication as to obviously what you need to train, but also, you know, how they might respond to that. Like if you're an athlete that's really twitchy and you can create that stiffness quickly, a lot of the time those athletes get super fatigued from grinding out heavy reps because they can hit that maximal contraction quickly, but then they have to hold it and grind it out for so long. And then you have other athletes that they don't have the ability to contract quickly, and so you give them a plyo and they're like, fuck, like I'm trying to be bouncy but I can't create that stiffness enough to actually use my tendons and use that bounce. So something that's supposed to be, you know, allowing us to utilize that elastic energy is now just fatiguing the shit out of our muscles because we don't have the ability to harness that elastic energy, right? And I think a lot of people that, not this is a bad thing, you're training for your sport, but if you get into powerlifting and you get out of doing that, you are going to lose that adaptation. But you're doing it because you're training for something else, right? Like that's fine.
Also, you'll get it back quick if you start doing it again, hopefully.
Yeah, no, you can definitely retrain it, and it's like it's not bad that you're this type of athlete. We just have to approach it differently. So like the psychological side is one thing, but like
cool.
Pause this.
Yeah. Coming again there?
Yeah, let's film me again. I kind of want to interject there. I kind of might bring this point up. It's like, John Moran can fucking jump, but how much can he squat? Right? Like that guy can fly. They will literally put his nuts in your face. But can he squat 3 plates? I don't know.
We've all seen the LeBron
Yeah.
squatting video.
Yeah,
It's like you see LeBron squat. It's like he doesn't squat much or that, but I think he produces like way too much force on the ground when he jumps or something like that. Something insane.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like X amount of body weight that just makes him fucking fly.
That's
right. So it's people like that, right? It's like you'll have people who can squat 800 pounds, but they can maybe only jump 30 inches.
Yeah, there's I went to a conference 1 year before COVID in California actually, and the strength coach for the Suns was there, the NBA team.
Is that the bald guy now with the
yeah,
yeah,
and
Corey,
he made the point. He was like, your best guys on the court should not be, or you should not make them feel like the most incompetent people in the weight room. It's like, you want to attack their weaknesses and you want to make them powerful, but you also want to allow them to like execute well. And a lot of the time, like when they're training in season, like they'll train after games. They'll play a game and then they'll go in the gym for 30, 40 minutes and do a workout because like that's when they have to do it. And they want to just consolidate that stress all in one day. It's like we need our days to rest and recover. It's like, get your game in. Yeah, you might be tired, but get your lift in. We're still doing what we need to do. We're not going to just like empty your bucket, but then you have that day after actually.
And that lift, like after the game, during the in-season lifts are just maintenance recovery. Like, we're not trying to get you stronger. We're trying to make sure you don't break down.
Yeah,
right? That's the whole point. Is keep that stimulus, keep the muscle mass, keep everything, so you don't break down as the season goes on. Right? And those workouts are all designed like that. You probably do the same thing in football. It's like the intensity of those workouts drops once you get to training camp.
Yeah, so with like a football standpoint again, we would get like me regularly like throughout the off season. Like I personally train more than a lot of guys that play football. I just loved it. I've been training like crazy since I was 13, and so I would like generally train 4 days a week in the off season. But once football season came, you can't train as hard because like we would have 2 days, like we'd be training all day on the field, right? We would have team workouts and stuff. So once like during the season came, we would only train like twice a week. I'd do like 2 full bodies workouts per week, squat, bench, deadlift, variations and stuff, just to basically like maintain my strength. I'm gonna lose strength, I'm gonna lose size during the season because there's so much more running, there's so much more of everything compared to the off season. So I would just cut it down, still maintain my strength, and then after the season I'd get back at it, increase all my food and everything.
Like,
so
and like stress is stress. Yeah, and stress is stress. Like regardless if you were running or you're lifting, regardless, that stress is literally the same on the body. It's gonna be similar-ish on the joints. Like,
and then with football,
so you also get hit.
That's you're also getting hit. That's what I was just about to say. So
knocked on your ass.
So in the gym and powerlifting and stuff, you're really sore muscle wise, but getting hit on the football field, you never, like after our first training camps of each season, like a couple days in, like you're so beat up. Like I got scratches on my neck and my ribs are all bruised. Everything's all smashed in. It's just a different kind of soreness. Like your body's still taking a beating. It's just not from the weights.
It's whiplash.
Now it's just friggin' CTE to the head. And you know, like it's just different. But
I remember too, like speaking back to that 89 nothing loss. Like, so I used to play O-line because I was a fat little kid. Like I was like 240 in grade like 8, 9. Oh, I was thick, bro.
You're getting ready for a fucking...
I was thick, So, and I remember, so I stopped playing because the school I went to, to private school, they didn't have a football team, obviously. So 3-4 years went by, I didn't play a single game of football. And then I come back in my 1 year like university or high school, at a public school. And I remember like a first game, it 8-0 game. I got a catch, turn, 2 dudes flattened. And I was like on the ground. I was like, man, fuck this.
Yeah, this is
like
really fun.
And we were down like 36-9. I was like, man, what the fuck's the point of this? Just flattened out, look at my 2 dudes.
Man, those hits hurt.
Oh my god.
I had one hit. One of my second university games at SMU. Like, so I could hit good. I played linebacker. I had some highlight reel hits, but this was the first time I ever been folded myself. So I was running down and like I was trying to tackle the punt returner, and I turn around because he cut back over the other side. I turn around and this guy's right here, and he levels me. I'm like 5 feet in the air, just flat.
And probably horizontal.
And I like stood up, and I was just like dazed. I fell back over. I was like, I've never been hit like that in my life, and I'm just like, this is the difference between high school and then university level. Everyone's massive and hit me, you know, like. Because in high school, I was at the top of the game because I was strong, like towards the end of high school, right? I could just destroy everyone. But when you come to university, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably see that too in the weight room. It's like, kids come in and it's like, like they get like, the ego comes in, man. You'll have some kids have the ego and all that coming in. Like, I remember even playing basketball that 1 year at university. It's like, you're all the better players from your usually better-ish teams.
Yeah, you were the big fish in a small pond.
And now you're just a small fish in a big pond. It's just like, it's completely different.
Yeah.
And it's you have to put that ego aside. I think a lot of people probably don't. You probably see that in the weight room even. Competitive. People like, man, what the fuck, blah, 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 blah. Like, he lifts less than me, but I'm not playing. It's like, there's things like that probably happen all the time.
Yeah, well, kind of 2 points on that. So, similar situation for me, like when I played high school rugby, it's becoming more normal now for kids to go and lift, and I love that.
It wasn't like that back in the day.
No,
like back when we were in high school.
Yeah, even like, however, way longer than I want to think about, but
good old 10 years.
Like lifting in high school was like, I wasn't an insane athlete. I was just decently strong. I played sports my whole life, and like I knew how to use what I had. But you get to university level, and it's totally different.
Yeah,
it's a different level of play, and it's funny you mentioned like, oh, I'm strong, why am I not playing? Like, Evan Holmes was that guy where he was like, he was a decent football player, but he felt deeply that because he wasn't performing on the field, he had to do more in the gym. And it's like, again, that goes back to that separation between, you know, strength is a skill, your sport is a skill. Keep them separate. And try to put them together. We're going to have a shitty practice and a shitty gym session, and you're not really getting anywhere, right? So...
All right, so my next question. We'll try.
Shut up.
Yeah, shut it, Evan. Share us on your page. Thanks. Okay, so lessons that you've learned from powerlifting training that have bled into your coaching of athletes. So is there anything that you've borrowed from powerlifting?
It's funny because we had this conversation recently, is the capacity, when the time is right, to actually grind out heavier reps. Like, I work with powerful athletes, but when they get over that like 90 to 95% range and you actually have them grind out a lift, there is a bit of like a mental barrier there because they're
Yeah.
used to moving fast. They're used to
Yeah.
and even with decently heavy loads, like
That's so true. Yeah.
we have a girl that just went to Memphis D1 javelin. She was like Team Canada baseball, just like great athlete,
Beast.
had the skills to throw. Now she's throwing javelin, and she can move heavyweight fast, and she's strong. But once you get to that like
Yeah.
close to a 1 RM, it's like she'll start grinding and then it's off. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah.
shuts down because
Yeah.
she's just not used to that
Yeah.
having to grind for longer than
Yeah.
that.
I remember too. I did like a short internship there at Spiel with the performance stuff. I remember they were saying the head coach was saying like powerlifters have that like you can
Grit.
It's like they have that better ability to grind versus an actual athlete where it's like
Yeah.
you can run the speed, but it's like you can get almost like 0.05 meters a second. Like you're just grinding it out, and it might build up a little bit.
Yeah,
Versus like if you look at that's like if you hit like 0.2 or something like that, you're done.
yeah.
Usually that's like you're almost done.
Yeah, well, and that's something you can really identify if you do like a force velocity
Yeah.
profile and you know select loads up to their 1 RM. You take those velocities and you can see where people drop off. And maybe part of this is from training, but part of it is like I'm not a naturally like twitchy, explosive person. Like my lifts are slow all the way up, but then I get to heavier loads and I can still kind of maintain that
Yeah.
speed. Versus
That's like
some,
me, dude.
yeah, and then other athletes are fast.
Like Andrew,
And then they-
but Andrew doesn't stop when it gets heavy. But like, fuck, he can move like
Yeah.
80+% so fucking fast. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
It's strong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's fucking
Yeah,
it's-
and we do the same thing with like throwing. Like we have med ball variations that we do, and we'll do like a 2-pound med ball, a 6-pound, a 10-pound, and we'll see how that drops off, and try to identify: are you more like strength force deficient, or are you velocity deficient? And we'll kind of separate them like that, because baseball is kind of unique. Where like, in what situation, like if you're throwing a 90-mile-an-hour baseball or fastball. In what other sport, any other situation, are you moving anything 90 miles an hour? Like, we can look at like dynamic effort work in the gym where maybe working at like a 1.0 meters per second, you start sprinting, we're looking at like, I don't know, 1.5, 1.8, 2.0, whatever the numbers are there.
yeah.
But none of that is anywhere close to actually moving something at 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we approach improving this?
Yeah, you can't load that.
Right? Yeah, exactly, right. And there are like weighted balls, some that are like lighter than a baseball, so you almost do like overspeed work, and then
Yeah.
some that are heavier, and that's not like my expertise, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
ways you progress those as well. But it's you gotta be careful with it.
Yeah, because like once you get into that like altering the bar, like sorry for us, like it's when you start altering the bar that we use, the position that we use, you start to alter like the technique, the positions, and blah blah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind of the same with like sports. It's like you start if you give a kid a heavy baseball to dribble,
Mhm.
his dribbling mechanics, and that's all you give them. Their dribbling mechanics are going to then change to be
Yeah.
with that heavy ball. Same with like a baseball or a bat. It's like he says, guys, like just with big heavy ass bats, doing that for like an exercise versus like just a little warm up. You know, I had 10-pound on, but you're doing like a 50-pound bat as an exercise.
Yeah,
Like,
so
that makes
fuck it up.
it's going to mess up your mechanics, etc. Stuff like that. So it's like
Yeah. No, it's the same thing with like sprinting too,
Yeah.
incorporating like loads.
yeah.
Okay, we can use heavy loads, like we can do heavy prowler
But
pushes.
it's like how heavy can you go?
Yeah, it's
Right.
like if I'm going to use heavy prowler work, I'm more so using that just to teach people the feeling of applying force into the ground, but I'm not doing it to fix anyone's sprint
No,
mechanics.
no.
If anything, it's going to make them worse,
Yeah.
right? So like, you get to that point with loading anything, like you said, where are you actually training what you're trying to train here, right?
Yeah. Which like comes back to you can probably just use your time in the gym to get stronger all around, and then hopefully that translates to being better at your sport if you just apply specificity on the field and actually practice the sport. But I don't think swinging a heavy bat or
Yeah.
like a fucking hockey stick that's 100 pounds or whatever, like I don't know if that's going to do a lot for you.
And I think too, like I assume you guys even do like I guess we'll call it a transfer test or like reliability test, stuff like that. Let's be like seeing how does this impact something in your sport. You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I think I was going on, me and Matt were going on this with you and people the other day or last week. It's like powerlifting doesn't have that. You'll have coaches just give someone
Who?
powerlifting. We don't have those
I thought you
transfer
said
tests.
Pavlov.
No, like the transfer test. We don't have those like transfer tests,
Yeah.
reliability tests. Like how is this working? Because you'll have guys throw
our max calculators, basically.
Yeah, but that doesn't do anything though. If it's a front squat, right? If you give say someone, because you'll see coaches do this, they'll throw like a high bar or like some sort of squat variation or bench variations, and they're all only doing variations because this is going to help with this part of it, but you have no idea if it's actually helping.
Yeah.
So you go 3, 4, 5 blocks, but like, yeah, this is going to work, and it's like, cool. Your total went up 5 pounds. You added 5 pounds to your squat max doing that, where it's like you probably could have just made that idea, okay, this isn't really working 2 blocks in if you had those tests, those specificity, like actually having top sets or
that's fair.
Sprint 100-meter sprint you ran a little bit. Yeah,
I had to eat that a little bit.
Yeah, it's like I mean, there's a lot you can always take from I guess, sports training because like we weirdly enough don't get a lot of practice of our sport.
Yeah.
But we're like okay with it.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like it's like no, it's fine. Take 6 months off. We're not gonna do any no heavy work. Just go do front squats again. Front squats. Yeah, I hate front squats, but it's like I see the value. But like it's like you go do front squats for 8 months and then come back. It's like you didn't get that much stronger.
Yeah.
Why? It's like you could have avoided that situation.
You only think of front squats as from a powerlifting improvement standpoint.
No, but there's so many that there are benefits to that.
But also, like, I just like front squatting.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's cool to throw. Anyway, that's not the topic for the podcast. But like, I like doing shit that sometimes I just like to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I personally find front squats do help my back squat.
Yeah.
Because it teaches me to actually keep my back tighter.
Yeah.
Because if I don't, I'm just gonna fall forward with the front squat. See, me specifically.
But he would make the argument that you can get that benefit from an SSB, which is true.
You can get that from an SSB, but like if you enjoy doing the front squat, are you gonna push the front squat harder than the SSB?
Yeah.
Right. You're probably because you like doing front squats more. You're gonna put more effort into it. Thus, you're probably gonna get better.
Yeah, I personally do both. I get like, like I find both those 2 variations, like front squats and SSB, both have, for me, a good carryover to low bar. Just like with like the strength in the upper back, the core strength, doing beltless training and shit too. For me, I find like it will help me progress with my back squat. Yeah. But nothing's going to help you progress with the actual lift than doing the actual lift more frequently. Yeah. Right? And
and this is where I was kind of getting with that, like all that. It's like, cool, you can do the front squats and the SSB and the high bar and the tempo, but it's like, if you aren't able to gauge how
that's affecting
your 1 R, like your one estimated 1 RM some way throughout a block, throughout a series of blocks, then you're just kind of wasting your time, right? It's
which is definitely why we've seen a huge shift into at least maintaining some sort of comp single. So we're getting into singles talk.
Like single, double, triple, something that
what I've been liking,
reliably see performance.
This I borrowed from Denovi is you don't necessarily have to be doing the comp lift for sets and sets and sets and sets. Like right now I have a client doing a Larson press top set and then a fatigue single of the comp lift and then more Larson press. Like you don't have to keep 4 or 5 sets of comp bench in all year. But if you have the single, it's like, how are we doing right now? Okay. Oh, your single's going down every week. All right, so something's wrong here.
Something's wrong.
So now it is a good idea.
Yeah, and it's like the same thing. It's like you wouldn't give a 100-meter sprinter, you wouldn't make them not run a 100-meter sprint through an off season.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be at least doing some reps of that every month.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's their sport. They have to do it, but it's like, how hard do you go? How many sets do you do? It's like it'll be pulled back, obviously, in an off season. Then when you get in season, it's like, cool, ramp it up.
Some of it to me too is just like a logical thing. Like I have a hard time accepting. Now there are caveats to this. This doesn't work for everyone, but I would just assume that if your high bar is going up, then your fucking low bar is going up too. But that's not necessarily true for everyone.
Yeah, but because you can't actually say that because your high bar can go up 40 pounds, but how much does that transfer over to low bar based off leverages?
Yeah.
Your glutes now are a little bit more active.
It does make sense.
Back, so it's like,
Which is why I love that. I kind of like the fact that social media is making all these different training endeavors, I guess maybe is the wrong word, but like everyone is sharing all their information. So like powerlifters are borrowing from bodybuilders and vice versa, and then we have strength athletes and just athletes in general that are, we're all getting to share these concepts that are helping us all go forward. It's cool.
And I think too, like even when you say like the bar from social media, it's like I think there's been, since the huge influx of people coming in to powerlifting, it's like you probably wouldn't have done powerlifting 10 years ago.
No,
It was barely
Because it's barely a thing, right?
Barely a thing
And now that
for
it's
me.
there, it's like, and I'm sorry to say, I'm also a washed-up athlete, but a lot of washed-up athletes come into powerlifting because it's something competitive to do.
Pretty
and
much, yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're all washed-up athletes here, just looking for something hard
I
to do.
can't just train for nothing. I need to be
goal.
competitive.
Exactly.
Well, so that's how I got into powerlifting. Not to make it about myself, but like I was just a gym goer, but I took it really, really, really seriously.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, what the fuck am I taking this so seriously for if I'm not going to go actually be a bodybuilder or whatever? And I had a girl tell me that I was like, I think my legs are big enough. She's like, you could use some legs. And I was like, fuck. So I started powerlifting that month.
Yeah.
Squats, deadlifts. Anyway, okay, so. Lessons from coaching athletes that powerlifters could benefit from. So we kind of touched on that.
Yeah.
But if you were to sum that up, what do you think that powerlifters would benefit from that they're probably not doing that you make athletes do and would pay dividends for powerlifting?
Mobility.
Yeah.
Just like general movement variability. I think just more variety in movement and what they're doing, whether they're loading it to any great extent or not. Just being exposed to more variety of movements.
Move in different planes other than front to back.
Yeah, and even just like unconscious stuff. Like powerlifting's such a hyper conscious sport when you're doing that movement. Like you know where everything's going, you know how it's supposed to feel. And I find like for people, especially with like overuse like tendon stuff, getting them like when we warm up, playing like spike ball and getting them out of their head so much and just getting them to move, and then they get halfway through the warm up and suddenly the knee that's been bothering them for 6 months, they didn't really notice it the whole time because they've just been not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to like
The pain
pain
science.
psych. Yeah, right. Like
Yeah.
pain science is so complicated, but just like trying to get yourself out of that pain cycle by just disconnecting from it a little bit. So yeah, like movement variety or variability and just like unconscious. Like just go like.
I would love to see a group of like
Go
5.
fucking move around.
Yeah.
I would love to see a group of 5 powerlifters play spike ball.
Yeah.
Be the most rigid. Rigid.
Stick a spike ball.
Shoulder blades back and down.
Head on the turf. Oh, that'd be great. No.
I was gonna say too, like, to your point there. I think now this is going the opposite route of the specificity thing. I think some people get caught in the specificity trap, and they think that because these great lifters that they see are always taking singles, that they need to be doing only the comp lifts.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, unless you're like 45 and you've been powerlifting for 25 years and you've built every ounce of muscle that your body can fucking handle, and all you need is exposure to the main lift so that you can keep moving that neural adaptation. Like, you probably don't need to only do low bar and comp bench and comp squat, and comp deadlift. Like, so exposing yourself to different movement variations just for the sake of, I don't know, variety, fun, novelty.
Yeah.
Like, why not,
It
right?
just comes to that off-season, on-season thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, where's the priority, right?
Yeah. Well, I think like muscle mass quickly for powerlifters becomes a limiting factor. Like, I don't know, the more I think about it, the more maybe this is unique to myself because I always struggle to put on mass, and maybe I get too caught up in the bubble of just doing comp lifts or variations of those. But if I have like a 16-year-old kid that's like, I want to get into powerlifting, half of my brain wants to just be like, go do bodybuilding for 5 years.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And just come back
do
and like
3 months of the comp lifts and you'll be like stronger than most people you know.
Exactly.
That's how I remember my squat blew up when I first started getting into powerlifting. I could attribute that because I was bodybuilding for 3 years before. I just like get all muscle, still doing a little bit of squats, but then you switch over to powerlifting. It's like, man, it just goes whoop.
Yeah.
Because as you get more efficient, better with the lift, it's like you have now all this muscle built to then
Well, it's like when you
actually
see
produce force.
like these bodybuilders at FX, they'll like get into a mood where they feel like doing fucking squats, and
And
they're
they're strong.
squatting mid fives
Yeah.
because they have. First of all, they know how to control tempo on lifts, so they stay in position because they're just used to controlling down and controlling up, and then they have all this muscle mass built. So once they teach their body to use that into a strength
a movement or skill.
yeah, like it's so that's why, like, for my clients, like, you might have the main movement for the day and then a variation, and then a lot of it is like externally stabilized machines and just bodybuilding. Like, I want you to be building as much tissue as you can.
Especially when you're young.
Yeah, dude.
Especially when you're young.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny you mentioned that. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Lucas the other day, because he runs Conjugate. He's been running Conjugate for as long as I can remember. And we were talking about dynamic effort work, and I was asking if they had ever used like a Tendo or any way of measuring velocity. and he was like, yeah, we got one and we used it, and it just becomes one of those, it's almost like a pissing contest where everyone wants to move it so fast that they're losing technique.
Yeah.
And I've actually this summer had the opposite issue with a D1 lacrosse player, and she was like pretty technically proficient with her bench, like very proficient bencher, but she wasn't hitting the velocities we wanted, even with like an empty bar, because she's just like so locked in that she kind of lost the ability to just like naturally just like push and be explosive. Because that's really what we want to train. It's like if you're gonna hit someone, you need to hit them and you need to be powerful. You're not thinking about locking your shoulder blades in
not
place.
flaring.
You want that protraction. You want to come through and be powerful.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we're doing bench press to achieve this adaptation, but we don't necessarily want a super technically sound bench to do that. If anything, by doing that, you're getting so in your head and coordinating the movement that we're losing that output. So I said, okay, like, you got to get out of your head. You got to stop trying, like, because I know you're proficient enough with this that even if you don't think about keeping everything exactly where it's supposed to be, it's probably generally going to be there because you know how to bench. Right? You've done this long enough. I know you know how to bench. Just think about moving the weight faster. And she does that, and her velocities go up, and it doesn't look like shit. It looks fine. It's just like how you think about that changes a lot of it. Again, it goes back to like the intent. Like if you're going to hit someone, you want to go through them. It's like the mindset behind that movement makes a big difference, especially with like velocity. And so like I see why in the context of powerlifting that could be a hindrance, because you're just chasing velocity when you need to have that competence, especially as like an equipped lifter, especially as a multiply equipped lifter when you're moving a lot of load.
If you move 1 millimeter in the wrong direction, you're fucked.
Exactly. And so you see equipped guys like miss their first 2 attempts and go into their third and fucking smoke it, because it's like, okay, there's a lot more to this than the raw lifters seem to think. It's like
the skill gap is big.
Yeah, it is.
It's a skill gap.
I find it very interesting watching Lucas train. I'm just like learning and seeing so many little things. I'm like, okay, that's cool. There's cool. That's something that they like people in I guess this new upcoming generation, like they've probably never even been exposed to equipped lifting, but like there's a fucking science there too for these guys that they need to be thinking about. It's interesting. Okay, last question is a lot more chill, but thoughts about your upcoming meet?
So
confidence through the roof, right?
So the last meet I ever did was by far the worst meet I ever did. It was it was actually my first CPU meet, and I was feeling pretty good going in, but I was also trying to cut down a weight class because I honestly, when I competed in the past, I'd always just like comfortably gone in at whatever weight I was at, and more often than not, I was like either in the middle or like close to the top of my weight class. But I never fully filled it out. I never even cut down to get there. I wanted to go down to 93, and I was like probably 215, 220 at the time. Pounds, converting freedom units to whatever.
Okay.
But
so you had to lose like 15 pounds.
Yeah, and I actually lost too much weight. Like I got really like anxious about it. I ended up losing more weight. I also like stopped smoking weed because I was like, am I gonna get drug tested? Probably not, because I'm weak as shit. But like, I'm still not gonna risk that, because at the time I cared. Looking back, I was like, fuck, why did I do that? Yeah. I'm like, I don't know, totally like in the 1200s. Like, who the fuck cares?
You get worried about getting tested.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're gonna use the fucking.
Had the worst meet of my life. Was so down on myself about it, and that's at the point where I was like, okay, this is becoming a lot with like school, like grad school and stuff. So I just stopped. And so this time around, I've tried to be like a lot more relaxed about the prep.
Nice.
Maybe to the point where I'm almost a little too relaxed, where I'm like, I'm not even fully writing down like all my accessory work, or like I'm not even, I know the progression I'm following with my main lifts. I know how that volume's gonna look and how the intensities are supposed to look. But it's basically just like a somewhat rough guide. And then same thing with the accessories. Like I know what things work for me and what things I want to do. Sometimes I don't get them in because I'm just crunched for time or being lazy or somewhere in between.
I think you can kind of forgive yourself in a prep if like some of that stuff goes out the window. You don't want it to all go out the window. You don't want to lose like your shape. You don't want to lose your like just being in shape and being fucking, I don't know, but I wouldn't beat myself up too much if you miss a fucking set of curls or whatever.
No, for sure. And so it's like I'm, I don't know, understanding, like, I haven't been doing this for a while. I haven't been powerlifting for like 6 years now. So I know not to beat myself up over it, but I do get competitive because I've competed my whole life. And so it's like, I know that if I go in, I'm going to care about it. So to kind of get in that place where I'm not like, almost like anxious about it, I have to be a little more like relaxed in how I go about training. Because I never came to FX expecting to get into powerlifting again. I just like wanted to put on more mass. And I was like, there's machines there that I can use to help me do this, because at our facility we've got like dumbbells, barbells, bands, like we don't
Yeah, it looks nice as fuck.
but we don't have machines, like we don't need that stuff.
Yeah.
And especially in the context of like running a group through in an hour, like logistics is its own thing when it comes to like groups of athletes. And so I trained for like over 3 years without any of that stuff.
Yeah.
All dumbbells, barbells, that was it. Doing some athletic stuff on the turf. But I came to FX because I was like, this might help me more easily put on mass, or at least train in a way that helps me do that. And then, hey, there's powerlifters here.
And you fell into it exactly where
sucked
not.
into exactly what I was not trying to do. But it's
That's
just like,
how good the community is.
Yeah,
That's
there you
how
go.
good we are at
There you go.
FX.
Shout out Sean.
Shout out Sean. Shout out FX.
yeah, well, at the end of the day, it's like, I want to enjoy what I'm doing. Like, I got into this, I kept doing it because I like doing it.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's fucking fun. I don't know.
yeah, no, it is.
It's cool being scared or something. I'm not. I like. I don't care how many plates are on the hack squat. It's not the same. It's not the same. You know what I mean?
It's different when you're looking at the squat PR and you're getting
And you're just.
and you got the
fucking
nerves,
space.
butterflies under your stomach. You're just
It's
getting
not the
hype.
fucking same, dude.
Yeah,
It's
well-
not the fucking same at all.
One of probably the greatest moments in like my powerlifting career, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
The first meet I ever went to in Amherst, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Ed Cohn was there.
Yeah.
As like a guest judge.
Yeah.
And he was in the warm-up room, and I sat beside him, and I was like I introduced myself, and I was like, this is my first meet. Do you have any advice for someone doing like their first powerlifting meet? And he was like, honestly, it doesn't matter if it's your first meet or your 50th or your 100th, you're always gonna be nervous, but the only reason you're nervous is because this matters to you.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is go out there and lift the weight, and you just have to do it, because it's never gonna change. You're always gonna be nervous. You're gonna become more confident, maybe a little more comfortable,